For today's video, you will learn some personal ways to cope up with stress and to maintain good mental health. Let's have a quick review of your previous lesson. Be ready with your notebook and pen to answer the following questions. Write true if the statement is correct and false if it is not. I will give you 1 minute to answer the questions. Let us check your answer. For number 1, it is true. Stress is a reaction of the mind and body to a stimulus that disturbs the well-being, state of calm, or equilibrium of a person. For number 2, it is false because stress may be defined as a stimulus, response, and relational, not international. And for number 3, it is false because dopamine is not a stress hormone. The name of the stress hormone is cortisol. And for number 4, it is true. Stress as a response is the way the body reacts to challenging situations. And for number 5, it is also true. Stress as relational depends on the individual's resources to deal with the situation that is causing the stress. Now, let's move on to mental health checklist in relation to stress. Assess the state of your mental health at this time by answering the mental health checklist below. Put a check before the number if you are experiencing these feelings or behaviors. I will give you 1 minute to answer this checklist. If you are experiencing these unusual or unexplained feelings and behaviors, then this may indicate an early warning signs of mental health problems. Now, I want to show you this picture. Applying the concepts that you have learned in science, list down some observations that may occur in the picture. It may include concepts like speed, pressure, or depth. I'll give you 1 minute to answer this question. In this picture, some of the observations are: 1. Water coming from top hole comes with less pressure. That means it covers less distance. Another observation: water coming from the bottom has a greater pressure. That means it covers more distance. And this relationship is what we know as pressure and depth relationship. That is, pressure is increasing with increasing depth. In our daily life, the container represents the pressures or stressors in our life. Stress is a normal response to situational pressures or demands, and it is really part of our daily life. But a prolonged or chronic stress can lead to mental health problems and medical issues. My question here is, how are you going to deal with stressors? I have here a picture of a stress bucket. As you can see, this is very similar to the picture which I presented to you a while ago. So, the bucket contains water, and the water represents the different sources of stress. This includes interpersonal stress, academic stress, or environmental stress. And then, you can see the different zone of the bucket. The upper part is the so-called buffer zone, and the lower part is the so-called stress level. In the stress bucket, we have the so-called good coping and bad coping. Good coping is when you let the stress out. Bad coping is when you are not working, so the water fills in the bucket. So that means you are increasing your stress level. The buffer zone is your bad coping skills, and they are unhelpful. Meaning, these are coping strategies that does not help you to lessen your stress. We have two approaches in coping stress. These are avoidance approach and acceptance action approach. When we say avoidance approach, this is when people tend to run away from the stress by denying the presence of stress and distancing from the stressors. Another, the acceptance action approach. This is when people acknowledge and accept the fact that stress is real and it has good and bad effects to a person. Look closely on how you cope up with your stress. Are these coping strategies helpful or not? I will give you some of the suggestions for helpful coping strategies. These are divided into three. We have the physical, we have the emotional, and lastly, mental and spiritual. Under physical, you can do the following strategies. 1. Simple exercises. Another, eating nutritious and healthy food. Next, drink a lot of water. And also, take a bath daily. Another, have at least 8 hours of sleep. And then, find, look, or imagine. And lastly, do sports. Under emotional, you can do the following suggestions. 1. Listening to relaxing music. Another, do your favorite hobbies. Next, watch funny videos. You can also do journal or blog. Another, release your emotions. Next, have a positive talk to yourself. And of course, learn to forgive. Another thing is to accept mistakes and learn from it. Next, support your group. And lastly, talk to professionals like doctors or counselors if needed. Under mental and spiritual, you can do the following. 1. You can read books, novels, or comics. You should think positive. And of course, manage your time. Plan ahead of the time. Pray to God. Be thankful. Learn to say no. And of course, know your value. These are unhelpful coping strategies. You should avoid them. These are criticizing yourself. Next, driving fast in a car or your vehicle. Another, avoid chewing your fingernails. Next, avoid becoming aggressive or violent, like hitting someone or throwing and kicking something. Next, you should also avoid eating too much or too little. Another, you should avoid smoking or chewing tobacco. And of course, avoid drinking alcohol. Number 8 is avoid yelling at your family members or friends. Next, you should avoid taking recreational drug or misusing prescription medicines. And lastly, you should not do this, avoiding friends and families. Now that you have learned some of the coping strategies, I will give you the next activity. In this activity, you're going to list down some factors that made you stressed out and demonstrate personal ways of coping with it to achieve a healthy lifestyle. And then, you're going to illustrate your answer by writing your steps on the stairways to coping stress. Your time starts now. This is the output of one of my students. Let us hear his answer.
Good morning, ma'am. I want to share some causes of my stress. First, the death of my father. Kapag may mga oras na naalala ko siya, nai-stress ako, nanghihina, at nawawala sa focus. So, the steps I took to cope with it, I just think about the happy moments we had. Yung mga ginawa niya sa amin, yung mga bonding na nangyari sa amin, yun lang yung iniisip ko at nagpapasaya sa akin. And I feel better when I do that. Pangalawa, or second, lots of activities. To cope with it, I always think I can. Kasi minsan, may mga activities na parang nadadown na ako na parang hindi ko po kaya. At yun, naiisip ko na kaya ko pala. Na kakayanin ko hanggang matapos tong pandemic na to, lahat. And I just think positively to able to focus. Yun, nag-iisip na lang ako ng mga positibong bagay na mangyayari para matapos ko ito. At pangatlo, yung hormonal imbalance or mga pimples. Nagiging sanhi din to ng stress ko kasi may sa buong katawan ko merong mga pimples kahit sa ulo, kamay, tiyan. At yun, nawawala yung self-confidence ko, parang nanghihina ako. At in order for me to cope with it, I just think I'm handsome. Joke. Yun, iniisip ko na lang na pogi ako. And I'm honing my self-confidence despite my skin diseases. At yun, nakakaya ko naman na magsalita ngayon kahit medyo nahihiya. Yun lang po, ma'am. Thank you po.
For the application of this lesson, I would like to ask you why coping up with stress is important in maintaining good mental health. Let us hear from Gwyn.
One of the things that a lot of us face right now is stress. It can either make us productive or unproductive. This is one of the reasons why a lot of us struggle. That is why it is important that we learn how to cope up with it. Coping with stress is important because stress affects our overall well-being. It's either it can make us have a negative outlook on life, or it can either make us a positive person and have a positive outlook on life and on things. We look forward to learning, sharing knowledge, having things to do, taking it as a productivity rather than a headache. It improves the way we live in a way where we get to enjoy a lot more things, produce happy hormones, and spread positivity. In contrast to this, we also learn how to accept mistakes and flaws that we have. Coping with stress is also a gateway to improvement and acceptance.
To summarize what you have learned today, I want you to complete these statements. You're going to fill in the blanks with appropriate answers. Your time starts now. For the performance output of this lesson, I want you to have a report of your steps to cope up with stress. You can create a short video clip for this activity. The rubric for that activity is presented in your module. I hope you have learned many things about stress and how to cope with it. For your assignment, I want you to interview or talk with a friend who is currently experiencing stress. You may ask your parents, guardians, and community leaders for their suggestions. After this, construct a plan to help a friend to cope up with stress. That's all for today, class. Have a nice day.